gentlemen, my name is Aaron Blade, and I'm the editor, creator, and producer of what you're watching right now, Blade Talk. If you are new here, welcome, and you find this presentation helpful, informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I am given. So by now, you've probably heard many people say America is fighting Israel's war. In fact, why did America attack Iran in the first place? We're thousands of miles from each other. Iran has no missiles capable of reaching the United States of America. The Iranian economy is in shambles. Why? Why did America involve itself? Join me as we explore that together. Let's hit that intro and let's begin. Alright, so again, why is America involving itself in this war? As I stated, Iran, the economy is in shambles. It has no missiles capable of threatening the United States of America. And there are thousands of protesters that were being killed, but let's face it, that's happening in other places in the world. You don't see the United States of America getting involved. With all that said, a lot of people are claiming the U.S. has been dragged into this by Israel. The Iranian regime has been threatening to wipe Israel off the map for nearly 50 years. Israel has waged multiple military campaigns against Iranian proxies, and Israel has spent the last few weeks pushing the U.S. to strike Iran, while the rest of the region seemed to be pushing diplomacy. So, has the Jewish state somehow managed to convince the most powerful country in the world to act against its own interests and fight Israel's war? So, let's back it up. The Islamic Republic of Iran was founded in 1979 after what they dubbed an Islamic revolution, which overthrew Iran's Western-backed secular monarchy, replacing it with a religious theocracy called the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic has a parliament and elected president, but only kinda sorta, because those elected officials have to first be approved to run by Iran's supreme leader, a religious figure with absolute power over every government decision. The supreme leader is not elected by the people. He serves for life, and he's a man on a mission. Since 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been very clear about its goals: to spread the Islamic Revolution as far and wide as possible. Ever since then, the Islamic Republic has been trying to carry out that mission on two fronts: inside and outside. Inside Iran, the Islamic Republic waged a holy war against its own citizens since day one. In the years following the revolution, tens of thousands of Iranians lost their lives at the hands of the regime trying to control the people. Islamic law was imposed on the population. Women's hair had to be covered. Blasphemy was a capital offense. Religious minorities are persecuted, with a special focus on the Baha'i faith, whose members face arbitrary imprisonment, confiscation of property, and physical threats. And we're talking about the Baha'i here, like the least threatening people on the planet. And of course, two men caught getting too friendly with each other faced between 100 lashes and the gallows. Outside Iran, the Islamic Republic's primary goal was to spread the Islamic Revolution. This meant bringing the holy war it was fighting against its own citizens to the rest of the world, starting with Iran's immediate neighbors. And at first glance, you think that might be easy. The entire region is Muslim after all, so they'd be on board with an Islamic revolution, right? With that, the Islamic Revolution got 30% of the world's oil production, teamed up with Pakistan, and started to chip away at India. With Muslim Turkey part of the revolution, you can start to move into parts of Europe with Muslim populations and then those without Muslim populations. Muslim North Africa is the road to the rest of Africa's land, minerals, and souls. But unfortunately, Iran's neighbors were not on board with the supreme leader's vision due to some internal disagreements between Muslims. You see, Iran is Shia. Much of the Middle East, the rest of the Middle East, is Sunni. And Shia and Sunni have been warring against each other for over 1,000 years. That meant Sunni states like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Sunni run Bahrain were not interested in Iran's Shia supreme leader taking over their countries. So the Sunni Arab states needed an ally to help defend against the Islamic Republic and their Shia Islamic revolution. And what better ally than the most powerful superpower, the United States? And the U.S. was all too happy to lend a hand, protect the region and shipping lanes and oil tankers that feed the energy hungry West. So, in one corner, you had Iran and like minded revolutionaries in Lebanon, Gaza, Yemen, Iraq, and a desperate opportunist leader in Syria, at least up until recently. In the other corner, you had the Sunni oil producing states, the US, Europe, and of course, Israel. Iran's goal is to get the US and by extension Israel out of the region and open the Sunni states up to revolution. Hence that whole catchy Big Satan, Little Satan PR campaign. But when it comes down to it, the US and Israel are far from Iran. It's the Sunni states that are truly under threat. Well, the Sunni states and their oil. That's the stage on which today's conflict is playing out. So here's the truth. It's not Israel versus Iran. It's the same old fight the region has been consumed by for over 1,000 years. But if this has been going on for 1,000 years, why are we only seeing a regional military engagement of this scale now? What changed? Two things. One thing we know for sure, and one thing that's up for debate. Let's start with what's up for debate. According to the Sunni states and Israel, for the last 2 decades, the Islamic Republic has been playing the long game. They've got some proxies active in Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq. But overall, the Islamic Republic was keeping things quiet because, well, starting a regional war wouldn't have gone well for them unless they had an ace up their sleeve. And by ace, I mean a nuclear weapon. A nuclear armed Iran would give the Islamic Republic significantly more leeway to spread the revolution. Just look at what Russia is getting away with in Ukraine, or what the US gets away with, well, wherever it wants. You can get away with a lot more with a nuclear weapon in your back pocket. So, for decades now, the Islamic Republic has been working towards building a nuclear weapon, while the Sunni states, the US, Israel, etc., have been trying to slow them down. I say it's up for debate because Iran says they aren't pursuing a nuclear weapon at all. They say claims to the contrary are just an excuse to bully them. But they've been enriching uranium far beyond what would be necessary for any civilian purpose, enriching it to a point that would make it easier for them to build a nuclear weapon, if that is indeed what they wanted to do. The Islamic Republic says the supreme leader has forbidden the creation of a nuclear weapon. But he didn't forbid them from getting all the pieces for a nuclear weapon into place, nor did he promise not to change his mind once he had those pieces together. So, for the last few years, the Sunni states have been extremely worried about the progress of the regime's nuclear program. And yes, Israel was also worried what with all Iran's repeated promises to one day wipe Israel off the map. Was the Islamic Republic nuclear program an imminent threat to the region? After the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites in June, it's unlikely Iran was about to bust out with a nuclear weapon anytime soon. Which brings us to the second thing that changed and brought about this unprecedented regional military confrontation. As I said, the Islamic Republic was playing the long game, supporting regional proxies but keeping things on a low simmer. But one of their proxies got impatient and decided it was time to start a regional war. Those impatient idiots were Hamas. On October 7, 2023, Hamas invaded southern Israel with the expressed intent of sparking a military campaign that would engulf the entire region, or at least their side of the region. As Hamas forces entered southern Israel, they expected Hezbollah to invade from the north, Iran to fire hundreds of missiles, Israeli defenses to collapse, and the state of Israel to finally fall apart and make way for a Muslim Palestinian state headed by Hamas. But nothing went according to plan because, as I said, Iran wasn't ready for that regional military confrontation without its nuclear weapons. And Hezbollah in Lebanon wasn't ready because a huge portion of Hezbollah's fighters weren't actually in Lebanon. They were tied up in Syria helping another Iranian ally fight a civil war and stay in power. So, October 7th, Hamas poured over the border into Israel. Hezbollah doesn't invade but fires rockets into northern Israel on the daily to show it supports Hamas without supporting it too much. Without the entire region descending into chaos, Hamas is on its own and more or less falls apart under Israel's relentless strikes on Gaza. And when things are a bit quieter in Gaza, Israel turns its attention to Hezbollah. After a month of intense fighting, Hezbollah is crushed. With Hezbollah out of action, Iran's ally in Syria collapses, and in turn, Lebanon's government turns on Hezbollah. In a little over a year, Hamas' dream has turned into the Islamic Republic's nightmare. They've lost their proxy in Gaza, their proxy in Lebanon, their proxy in Syria, and with the dominoes falling, Israel pressed their advantage and took the fight directly to the Islamic Republic in a 12-day military confrontation that revealed just how vulnerable the Islamic Republic was to Israel's airstrikes. Things were looking very, very, very bad for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Their strongest ally, Russia, was bogged down with its own problems in Ukraine. China and North Korea were allies in name only. The U.S. turned up the pressure by piling on economic sanctions, and the Iranian currency collapsed. In late 2025, Iranians took to the streets to protest the epic failure that was their government. The regime understood how vulnerable it was. They may have lost their proxies, but they could not afford to lose control of the street. A horrifying crackdown ensued, with thousands killed and tens of thousands imprisoned. No matter how you looked at it, the regime was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the U.S. was threatening to push it over. But as bad as things looked for the Islamic Republic of Iran's leadership, there was in fact a glimmer of hope because that 12-day military confrontation with Israel revealed a critical weakness in the region's defenses. And with a little time, the Islamic Republic might be able to capitalize on that weakness and maybe, just maybe, turn the tables in their favor. That weakness? Missile defense. So Iran fires a volley of missiles, and Israel fires missile interceptors to shoot down those missiles. But what became clear during that 12-day military confrontation was that Israel and the US had a limited supply of interceptors. So if the Islamic Republic had more missiles than there were interceptors, they'd have more leverage. They could hold off more Israeli and US strikes, step back from the precipice, rebuild their nuclear program, get back on track. Once they had a nuclear weapon, no one would dare strike. According to Israeli intelligence, after the 12-day military confrontation with Israel, Iran started producing missiles as fast as they could. The IDF assessed that Iran was aiming to have 8,000 missiles within the next 2 years, and they were producing kamikaze drones even faster. 500 drones a day. It was a numbers game. If the Islamic Republic could just keep the US at bay, drag talks out, it would have a chance at survival. They just needed to stall the US. But unbeknownst to the Iranian Republic, the US was also stalling. The nuclear talks were just being used to buy time, time enough to move overwhelming firepower to the region. Enough firepower to either convince leaders of the Islamic Republic to finally back down, or enough firepower to take them out. Israel was lobbying hard for the U.S. to strike Iran while the Sunni states were pushing diplomacy. But there are reports that behind closed doors, they too were pushing the U.S. to strike. Either way, it was clear they wanted to stay out of it to avoid retaliation by the Islamic Republic. And the Iranian regime seems to acknowledge that even pledging to only strike U.S. bases in those countries, but not the countries themselves. So the talks went forward, but let's face it, the talks were more or less doomed from the start. Trump's conditions were impossible for the Islamic Republic to accept. Give up their missiles, give up their proxies, and give up their nuclear program. Anything less, and the U.S. was going to try to press its advantage and push the Islamic Republic into the abyss. And here we are. The supreme leader is dead. The U.S. and Israel are slowly destroying the power centers of the regime in order to provide Iranians who oppose the regime an opportunity to take control of their government. Despite its promises, the Islamic Republic responded by firing missiles and drones at the Sunni states in hope that the chaos would be so outlandish that the Sunni states would push the U.S. to stop the strikes on Iran. Iran's only hope now is to either outlast the supply of missile interceptors and turn the tables on the US and Israel, or weather the storm, keep control of the streets, and when the US and Israel have run out of targets, start the whole story over, which means the US, Israel, and the Sunni states can only set the clock back on the Islamic Republic's ambitions. Ultimately, it's up to the Iranian people whether the cycle continues or we begin a new story. So, when it comes to the U.S., are we fighting Israel's war? To believe that, you'd have to believe that the most powerful country in history of the world takes orders from a country the size of New Jersey. Not to downplay Israel, it's undoubtedly a regional power with a strong economy and one of the most advanced militaries on the planet. But let's be real. This planet has been dominated by the US since World War II. The weight of Israeli power doesn't come close to matching the scale of the American military and economy. The US economy is about 43 times bigger than Israel's. The US sets the agenda. Allies can advocate for their interests, but when Uncle Sam says no, the answer is no. Take U.S. military aid to Israel, everyone loves to bring up. We fund Israel. When in actuality, $3.8 billion annually goes to Israel, which seems like a lot until you realize that 75% of that money has to be spent in the U.S. weapons industry. Imagine someone giving you $100, but 75 of it has to be spent in their store or their business. When Israel wanted to develop its own fighter jet, it was the US that threatened to cut ties. One reason Israelis themselves have questioned the relationship in the past. So, what is the American interest here? Well, setting aside the justice of the movement for a free Iran, and by the way, free Iran, let's talk real politics. It comes down to power politics. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have been steadily expanding their spheres of influence. The more powerful they become, the less power the U.S. exerts globally. Even President Trump, who ran on ending wars, framed his platform as restoring America's place as an unchallenged superpower. China fuels much of its growth with oil from anti American regimes like Venezuela and Iran. A stronger Ayatollah regime in Iran directly undermines American influence. Israelis, whose interest in a new regime in Iran is obvious, don't have to convince an American administration that maintaining American global dominance matters. That's already in Washington's stated interest, not a secret agenda, the open agenda of every president since Truman. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you think a world where China, Russia, and the Ayatollah shape the global order would be better, that's an internal American debate. Yet, it seems like many are avoiding that debate, choosing instead to scapegoat an ally in the American alliance rather than reckoning with America's own power and responsibility. So, yeah, criticize Israeli policy, the war, and the cost of the U.S. and Israel relationship, but don't gaslight us into thinking that the most powerful country in modern history is taking marching orders from a country with a smaller population than Ohio. If anything, it is Israel that often marches to an American beat. So, hopefully, in this presentation, I've demonstrated to you that this whole talk of America is fighting Israel's war is not really true. Iran is responsible for killing hundreds of American troops, not to mention the green light that Iran put on President Trump, in which some tried to capitalize on that. So, America getting involved is adhering to its own interest, in which we are the superpower of the world. And in order to maintain that dominance, there are certain things that we have to do. So, if you found this presentation helpful and informative, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Do me an even greater favor and subscribe to my channel. I always appreciate all the support that I'm given. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Blade Talk. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and until the next presentation, you all take care.